Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the 135K Coolant truck. So, the class of 135K Lifesaver Coolant truck built for the Draconis Combine by Buddha Imperial Vehicles is a standard example of the coolant trucks employed during the Succession Wars, differing only in the choice of its weaponry. Originally developed in 2588 during the Reunification War, the now ubiquitous coolant truck doubled as effective range, uh, doubled the effective range, I'm sorry, of SLDF mechs uh, on water poor periphery worlds, serving a similar purpose with the depleted heat sink technology of the Succession Wars era. Coolant trucks stationed themselves close to the battlefield where they can be hooked up to overheated mechs for the purpose of flushing away the excess heat with super cold liquid nitrogen and or liquid oxygen. The liquid oxygen is also used to replenish the environmental systems on board mechs. Standard Great House combat doctrine is for a well maintained regiment to have about 6 trucks, ensuring that an overheated mech will almost always have access to a ready cooler. The Lifesaver has 5 receptacles for long rubber plastic hoses used to attach to overheating battle mechs. The first four dispense liquid nitrogen, while the fifth contains liquid oxygen. Light and medium mechs have hookup points for just one hose, but heavy and assault mechs require two for cooling. Mechs are especially vulnerable when hooked up to the cooler. After the collapse of the Star League, a new battlefield etiquette evolved among both the Inner Sphere and clans, which extended a special courtesy to a coolant hooked mech. The enemy will usually ignore a mech that is hooked up to a cooler as long as it does not shoot, becoming fair game after disconnecting and moving a few meters away. Okay, looking at the weapons and equipment here, the most notable difference between the Lifesaver and other models of coolant trucks are the two Dragon's Breath flamers. It carries in a cab mounted turret. Though a though it's rarely used offensively, the nearly limitless supply of liquid oxygen allows for the gunner to fire at will without fear of heat buildup. There is enough ammo for about 40 shots. The feature that earned the 135K its lifesaver nickname is the ability to quickly convert the flamers to fire liquid nitrogen, able to spray dangerous overheated mechs and cool them extremely quickly. Other manufacturers have noted this ingenious dual purpose and have taken to refitting their coolant trucks in such a manner. The Lifesaver has two insulated cargo compartments, one storing 5.655 tons of liquid nitrogen, the other 2.175 tons of liquid oxygen. All right, for variants, many types of coolant trucks exist. Some are hovercraft, others are tracked vehicles. Most carry the two super cool liquids, though some may carry only one liquid, either the nitrogen, and leave the other coolers to bring the liquid oxygen. Coolant trucks are usually armed, sometimes with a combination of weapons. Others have no weaponry. Uh, every house is currently studying the installation of the dual purpose flamers that the Lifesaver uses so efficiently. So, looking at what we have here, we have from Dwayne Lewis, the original drawing that comes from the 3025 technical readout. And it's nicely done. And then we have another one sitting right next to a catapult. And this one is done by Chris Lewis, taking his design inspiration from Dwayne Lewis. And then that's all the pictures we actually have. Now, I will say that I've never really used the coolant truck in a battlefield sense. For the most part, and I've said this before, we usually just got down to doing small mech uh, missions or whatever. Quite often, really towards the end of high school and all that, before we started going our own ways, and we all went into service, and it's it's taken a while for us to try and get back together. Usually, it's just me and my best friend, and even there, we do have a hard time trying to get our schedules to link up to actually get together to play games. So unfortunately, it's not like we get to play all that much. But towards the end of high school, we just sat down and came up with two 100-ton battle mechs, and we're just beating the snot out of each other. But one of the funny things is my best friend trying to overcome the heat. Instead of using a coolant truck, he had a single-use coolant flush system that he kind of came up with, which he kind of shoved it towards me for a possibility as something. I don't remember how many tons we had devoted to it, but I was like, you know what, sure, let's try it. So um, with that, he was able to kind of stack up on different weapons and kind of overheat his uh, assault mech and try and take me out. But the hilariousness is, no matter what we did, it usually came down to a toe-to-toe fist fight of two 100-ton battle mechs. Whoever got the lucky roll to just knock somebody's block off was the winner. And it's just the hilarity of spending a week trying to come up with the ultimate loadout to try and do this, and we just end up toe to toe. But for an actual purpose, the fact that they have come up with all this stuff so many years ago, saying this is what regiments are going to need because we're going to have these mechs being pushed and they will overheat. Something I know that in putting this into a D6 sense, I'm taking the heat issue out of it. But remember, I'm doing this in the text of, we're doing this as more of a role playing game, not the tactical game, which, and I've said this many times before, if I was doing this as a tactical game, I would always keep to the traditional Battletech rules, because they've done that so very well. I can't improve on that in any way, shape, or form. All I can do is try and bring it into a role playing game sense where it makes it a little bit more fluid and something easier to work with in that regard, which is where I'm going with all of this. So, with that, let's get on over to our D6 stats and see what we have. All right, so let's look at our D6 stats here. The coolant truck, being at Walker's scale, does come in at about 30 tons. We do have a crew of 6 listed for this. We don't have any passengers on board that I'm going to be aware of. The cost that's actually being presented to us is going to be 315,675 C-bills. We have about 9 tons of cargo available on board this truck, and it's going to be used for the coolant purposes. Now, we do have full coverage, and it's going to be at ground altitude range. The maneuverability. Now, being a 30-ton vehicle, by my little scale that I've come up with, because we start off with a 3D, and then 30 tons drops us down by 1D, or by a plus 1 or negative 1, however you want to. So that would take us to a 2D plus 2. And then for the speed that it's actually going, would actually, because it's got a flank speed of 6, would actually take us up to a 3D plus 1 for maneuverability. That being said, that also means that our movement speed is 64.8 kilometers an hour. Our body strength is going to be at a 3D because it's at 30 tons. And it does have a listing of 96 armor points on board the vehicle here. Shoot, and I forgot to think about how many tons of armor that really is. But either way, all right. Now, simply put, we only have 2 flamers. They are on the same turret up on top. So it's 2 flamers. They're fire linked turret. Uh, for our fire arc, these are going to be at the Walker scale, keeping everything at that same scale here. Fire control is 2D. because there are two of them, damage is 7D. Now, I didn't change the roll of a D6 flamer, uh, a D6 for the flamer, because it's going to deal another 3D damage for every extra round. I don't think we need to change that at all, being fire linked, because there's always that possibility you might just get hit by one flamer or maybe both, but I think you're still going to have that same possibility that it might go for just the same amount of rounds. Now, if you want to double that because there is two of them, maybe roll 2d6, because we have doubled that, but I'm going to leave that to your discretion. In some regards, I don't think it really needs to be changed, but there might be people that might want to argue it, and you're going to have reasons for it, and I'm not going to dismiss that. I'm throwing it out there as a possibility. Me just wanting to keep things a little on the easier side, because that's just if we're going to try and just say, hey, let's not shoot that because it's going to be something we're going to want to capture instead of destroy. Yeah, let's not worry too much about this, the flamer on this part of it. But there again, running it as a role playing game, you might have it shooting at you as someone's trying to keep you from capturing their coolant truck. So, it goes back and forth, and it always will. And I don't have a problem with that. So, all right. With that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next video.